Welcome to my homestead kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to render down raw fat like this into a nice, beautiful, clean product. Knowing how to render down fats is such an essential skill to have, and unfortunately it's been lost in our modern world. The process is super simple and you can do this for any fats. You can do it from pork fat, beef fat, chicken fat, and today we're actually going to be doing it from deer fat. It's deer season here in Minnesota and it makes a lovely deer tallow. Let's dive in. And the reason why we want to render down fats is for several reasons. One, it doesn't look all that appealing right now, does it? The other is there's still these chunks of meat on there, which is going to cause it to spoil. So we want to make this into a clean, nice product that we can use for candles, making body balms. You can cook with it. You can make soap. So many uses for rendered down fats. So the only tools that you're going to need for this rendering process is a food processor, which isn't absolutely necessary, but it makes it a whole lot easier, and then a crock pot, or you can also use a stock pot on the stove, but I prefer a crock pot because it's low and slow, nice and gentle heat. So what we're going to do is start chopping up this fat, and you want it really nice and cold. So I moved it from the fridge into the freezer for about 30 minutes before we started filming. Beautiful. So this is what we're looking for, a nice crumbly texture. So I'm going to go ahead and move this to the crock pot now. So this little batch is in and ready to go. And what I did while I was preparing this little small batch is I went ahead and moved my bowl of raw fat into the freezers to keep it cold. So I'm going to bring it back out. We're just going to keep going back and forth, shredding, dumping until that whole crock pot is full. See, I let my fat get too warm, and this is what happens. It all just kind of gums up. So I'm gonna get it back in the freezer, cool it down, and then it should blend up nice. Now we're just going to set the crock pot on low. If you are planning on using a stock pot on the stove, I would recommend adding an inch or so of water to keep it from burning, because the stock pot on the stove is naturally going to be a little bit higher of heat than the crock pot. But with the crock pot method, it's really gentle, so I never add water, which is pretty slick. Add the lid, but leave it ajar because it is important that the moisture escapes. So if there's any residual water in there, it's going to lead to spoilage. So just leave it off to the side and we'll let it do its thing. So update on our rendering deer tallow. So it's been on for probably 2 hours now. It's starting to melt on the sides, but we still have a ways to go. So I'm just going to get the lid back on, cockeyed off to the side a little bit. We're going to let this go overnight and we'll see what we have in the morning. Good morning. So this is where we're at the moment. So things are definitely rendered down quite a bit. I'd say we're almost there, but you can see like there's still some globs of whole fat that haven't rendered down yet. So we're going to give it a little bit more time and then we'll be ready for the next step. All right, my friends, I think we have arrived. This has been going for about 16 hours now, and you can see that any of the residual chunks, they are caramelized now. There's no raw fat left. So what these chunks are is these are called cracklings. And so these are any of the impurities like bits of tissue, connective tissue, muscle. You never know that we are going to strain out. And so what's left is going to be a really nice clean fat that's going to be shelf stable. And you can kind of get a little preview here. where I've been setting my spoon. So it's going to turn a nice pure white. So it's going to be beautiful in the end, I promise. So I have my crock pot off now, so it'll start cooling down a little bit because I don't want to be dealing with piping hot fat. And next steps is we're going to strain this out. One more important thing I should mention is that if you added some water to your crock pot or your stock pot for the rendering process, make sure it has all completely evaporated out, because if there is any residual water in here, it's going to cause that rendered fat to spoil. Okay, here we go. So I just have my strainer set up on a glass container. This is warm because we're going to be adding warm contents. We don't want to shatter the glass. So I'm going to go ahead and start scooping. Now that this strainer is getting a little bit full, I'm gonna go ahead and set these aside, and then we can finish up the last little bit. Now, as far as these cracklings go, we have a few options. You can absolutely eat these. They can be like little croutons on a salad, anything like that. They are pretty high in fat, so I'd be careful about the amount that you're giving maybe to your dog. If you wanted to repurpose it to your dog, you can also discard it. So wherever you're at in your journey, just know that there are options for the cracklings. Ooh, I think we're just gonna barely fit here. Whew. Now look at that. So everything is strained out. It's really nice and clean, so none of those impurities are left. So the next step is we're just gonna leave this be until it fully cools. And again, it should turn just a really nice clean white, kind of like this little bit of dried dribbles off to the side. So stay tuned and we'll come back in a couple hours and see how it looks. So after a few hours, our tallow has completely cooled. It's nice and beautiful. Now, one note to make about containers. I like to use really wide, flat containers for tallow, meaning beef tallow, deer tallow, because it's a very hard fat. I made a mistake the first time when I rendered down beef tallow and I put it in a mason jar. It's really hard to chip out of there. A mason jar works fine for things like softer fats, like rendered down chicken fat, which is called schmaltz, and rendered down pork fat, which is called lard. But for these harder fats, I like a container like this. As far as storage goes, this is going to be shelf stable, just on the counter in your cupboard for 4 to 6 months in a container like this. If you throw it in the fridge, it'll be good for about a year. If you throw this in the freezer, it'll be good forever. So it's a wonderful shelf stable fat that you can use or tuck away for years to come. Now you might be wondering, what the heck do I do with all of this rendered down fat? So there are a lot of amazing things you can do with it. First of all, you can just use it as a fat for cooking. Animal fats, once they're rendered down, they're a really great stable fat for high heat cooking. You can also use the harder fats like your tallows for making candles. You can also make bar soap out of rendered fats, which is great. And then my favorite is body butter. So we can make this into a luxurious and nourishing body balm. So it's so great, especially in our long Minnesota winters. Now, up until now, I have only made tallow balm from beef, but I'm going to use my deer tallow so that we can be able to make a moisturizer right here from our homestead. So something that we've harvested here. So you might have guessed it. I have a video coming up on how to make that tallow balm, and we're going to do it from deer tallow, but you can definitely do it from beef tallow as well. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that video. It's honestly really easy. And once you try it, you'll never be able to go back. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate your support, and I'll catch you on the next video.